Justin, because it's been such a long international break, I'm slightly worried about a lack of pod fitness for you. Mm-hmm. So to make sure you're on your toes, I'm introducing something new to the midweek show. It's called 5 in 10. And what's going to happen is during some point in the show, I'm going to say 5 in 10 and a category. You then need to name 5 things of that subject in 10 seconds. How does that sound?
I think I can manage.
Okay. I'm not sure you can, because from my experience when it comes to the various games that we played on this show, you sometimes have the occasion where the pressure gets to you. But that's something for everyone to look forward to. And we need to make sure you're on your toes ultimately, don't we? It's what every good manager does, particularly after an international break. So welcome along, everyone, to the Second Tier Podcast. It's been a long international break, hasn't it? Really does feel like a long time since we last had any championship action. And of course, a lot has changed from an England perspective in that time, but we're back once again to talk championship matters and to get you back up to date with the latest goings on from the past week in the greatest league in the world. And as I said at the top of the show, we've got a potential new signing at Leeds, as well as the latest on Cardiff's search for a new manager. But before we get into that, we haven't had a chance yet to talk about the passing of George Baldock, Justin, at the age of 31, the former Sheffield United and MK Dons fullback. He made 137 appearances at championship level, 83 in the Premier League with Sheffield United, where he helped them win promotion twice from the second tier. I'm sure everyone is aware of his passing by now, but as I said, the news broke last week on Wednesday night, a few hours after we had already recorded last week's episode. So we haven't had a chance to pay tribute properly yet, Justin, to a fantastic player.
Yeah, he was. He was just absurdly consistent as well. It's one of those players where you just look at him and you think, I don't think I've ever seen you have a poor game. As I say, it comes from that incredible consistency, great player, and the perfect blueprint for a wing back. And I think his career is a testament to that consistency, having played right through the football pyramid from non-league with loan spells all the way up to the Premier League. So yeah, fantastic player and a really sad moment.
Yeah, I think he was a really underrated part of that brilliant Chris Wilder team, wasn't he? I mean, that team in general was full of underrated players in a strange way, but he was so important too. I suppose the best example of how important he was is in that 1920 Premier League season, where Sheffield United finished 9th, by the way. People often forget that. Baldock was the only player who played every minute for them in that campaign. But he was such a beloved player at Bramall Lane, and I'm sure it's going to be quite an emotional occasion when they play their next home game against Stoke a week on Saturday. And it's got to be said, hopefully there should be a banner there, because I think I saw earlier that Sheffield United fans are trying to raise money for a big George Baldock banner, which would be a really, really nice touch. Because he's left a lot of happy memories there at Sheffield United, hasn't he? And I mean, one that sticks in my mind, Justin, is that goal he scored against Swansea, that ridiculous volley. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do. It remains one of the cleanest strikes of football. Shot was a bullet. The ball coming into him was looping, and I think it just tells you how difficult a technique he had to pull off to get that in. And leaving a lot of fans with plenty of good memories of George Baldock, with that goal being probably up there as well.
Yeah, some player he really was, and it's in moments like this where the football family really comes together, because there was that really nice story that Panathinaikos in Greece, who Baldock had only just signed for in the summer, by the way, they're going to be paying the whole of his 3-year contract to his wife to help raise their son, which is just a really nice gesture, isn't it? But, we of course send our best wishes to his friends and family, and it's just obviously tragic news, really, really tragic news. Let's go on then to some championship news from the past week, Justin. We'll go to the latest on Cardiff's search for a manager, because Wales Online is now reporting the club are willing to wait until after this international break now. They say the club hierarchy haven't decided on who they want to take charge and are currently happy with the direction that caretaker boss Omar Ritza has taken the club in the last 3 games. What do you think about this, Justin?
This is so Cardiff. This is so bloody Cardiff. This is like, do you know when you're organising a night out, and you say to your friend, what do you want to do? And they ask you, no, what do you want to do? You just vacate responsibility. That's what they're doing with Omar Ritza. They don't want to be responsible for another appointment. So they're going, actually, no, Omar Ritza's done a good job. He's done okay. Nothing groundbreaking. But for me, I just think the club would benefit from a little bit more experience. It doesn't have to be championship experience, but just a little bit more experience. And they are vacating that responsibility to Umar Ritza. They are saying, actually, you do it. We don't want to handle this. You can do it. It's just very Cardiff.
It's very Cardiff, isn't it? I think sometimes as supporters, we don't appreciate that these things do take time when it comes to appointing a new manager, because, you know, it is something that does take a lot of time, and we may need to be more lenient in these kind of situations. However, it doesn't seem like those in charge of Cardiff have any idea what they're doing, do they? I'm fresh off the back, having spoken to Christian Speakman at Sunderland, and we gave them plenty of stick over how long it took them to appoint a new manager. But he was saying that they were still monitoring loads of different managers who were just not available at the time. With Cardiff, I don't get the sense they have any idea who's potentially going to be managing them this time next month.
No, and that's the key thing. And perhaps there is that recency bias of having listened to such a candid interview with a very switched on sporting director at a very well run club, that we go into, you know, somewhere like Cardiff and we look at things and we're immediately able to pick holes in it. And it might be an element of it being unfair, but at the same time, Cardiff have been doing the same thing for 4 years. I'm trying to go back now. When did Neil Warnock leave? It was 2021, wasn't it? So they've been doing the same thing for 4 or 5 years. It's been a poorly run establishment, if you like. And as I say, they're happy to just allow things to. No, actually, I just don't think they're happy taking on a tough decision. There's clearly not a lot of process involved with picking Cardiff managers, and that's why they're very content with another caretaker in charge. It's just not effective, especially not in Cardiff's position. You can forgive Sunderland last season because they had no threat of going down. There was obviously the opportunity to be in the playoff contention, but there was no threat of going down, so they could go through the motions. They could allow themselves a bit of buffer time. Cardiff do not have that. They do not have that. They have started the season very, very poorly, and they need a manager. They need a solution. Whether they pick Omar Ritza and just say, you have the job, do that, or put a manager in charge. You've had enough time.
Yeah, I completely agree, Justin, because right now it feels like they're taking it on a game-by-game basis with Ritza and seeing how he gets on. But I just don't think you can be that short-sighted when running a football club, particularly like Cardiff, who are in serious danger of going down. And look, Ritza, as you say, he's doing all right. Not amazing. It's all right. Maybe he will turn out to be a good manager in the long term, but it's quite a big gamble because Cardiff need all the points they can get right now. And if it doesn't work out, then they need to make a decision on who they actually want. And they don't seem to have any clue as to who that's going to be. Like, as we say, well-run clubs have some sort of a foresight about who they want to get in, whether it's, in a few months' time or whether it's when you're in Cardiff's position, like, they need a manager now. Right now, I just don't see what Cardiff are thinking. And that's quite worrying when they're in the perilous position that they are. Let's move to Leeds United, shall we? They're in talks to sign former West Ham and Crystal Palace midfielder Cheikhou Kouyate. The 34-year-old has been a free agent after leaving Nottingham Forest in the summer. Leeds have been looking at the free agent market after the injuries to Atdhe Nuhiu and Ilya Gruev in midfield. Rather confusing what's actually going on here. So the latest that's definitely true is Kouyate has been at Leeds' training ground. I don't think anyone's disputing that. But there's been contrasting reports over whether he's actually signing or not. So I've seen some reports saying he's passed a medical, but Leeds aren't finalising the deal for whatever reason. I've seen other reports saying he's struggling to prove his fitness. So we don't really know what's happening at the time of recording. But what do you think, Justin? Could he be a useful signing if it were to happen?
Yeah, I think he certainly brings a lot of attributes into the Leeds midfield. He's a different type of midfielder to what they've got at the moment. Obviously, Ampadu, Gruev aside. Joe Rothwell is a little bit more of a sort of a box-to-box player. He likes to get in and around the opposition area and get shots off and arrive late in the box. Tanaka, again, provides a little bit of energy, whereas Kouyate is a bit more of a destructive force. And when fit and firing, he can really add that sort of break up play, give it to someone a little bit more technically advanced than he is. And in addition to that, there's a wealth of Premier League experience there. It's just whether or not he can get over those injury problems that he's had later on in his career and hit the ground running for Leeds, which is what they really need.
Yeah, he is 34 now, so he would bring a lot of experience in that regard, wouldn't he? And I mean, he was fantastic a few years ago for West Ham in particular, I think, where he was just like running games from midfield. So if he is able to replicate that kind of, form, that'd be fantastic. And you know what? I'd go as far to say that if he is fit and he does sign, then he has the potential to be a bit of a cult hero at least, I think, because, we've seen it before, haven't we, where we have these kind of players who are kind of drafted in out of nowhere to do a job and then actually do quite well for themselves by having a big impact. It's just a question of, is he fit or not? Because, Leeds needs someone who can do a job now, because Ampadu, we know, is going to be out until January. Gruev, I think, is even further along than that. So Leeds needs someone who's going to do a job now and basically hit the ground running with them. And if he's not fit, then he's not really much use to Leeds. But as I say, if he does prove his fitness, then do you think he could be a bit of a cult hero, Justin?
I think he can. His mentality and his vibrancy off the pitch is there. He's a great character. But in addition to that, what that does, it casts my mind back to when Derby did it about 10 years ago. They signed Khalifa Cisse, former Bristol City midfielder, and he only played about 3 games, but my God, they were the best 3 games you've ever seen from a central midfielder. And that was to cover an injury crisis. And you are right, these players can come in, they come in to do a job and they end up just making the place better. And that's what Kouyate can do. But as I say, there's just a lot of dependability on him being fit, passing a medical and being able to slot into that start 11. That being said, he might not even be first choice. He might just come in, make up the numbers in training and add that experience, bit of depth that they do need at least until January, where they can find a little bit more of a solid option. That being said, that gives him a lot of time to become an icon in a short space of time.
Yeah, maybe. We're all talking about, the best possible thing that could happen here for Kouyate and Leeds if this signing does happen. But, with the amount of experience that he's got, and we have mentioned quite a bit how Atdhe Nuhiu's come in, new to the league, never played here before. At least Kouyate has that string to his bow. And then, that can help Tanaka bed in a bit more in the long term, I suppose.
Takes the pressure off him as well, because if Tanaka picks up a knock or is tiring in games, Kouyate can come on last 10 minutes and see it out.
Because they have no one else. That's why they need
they just need
someone like Kouyate to be able to come in and do a job. So if they don't have that, then it'll be interesting to see how things do turn out. But it'll be interesting to see how that does go. Let's take a quick break just before that. 5 in 10. Name 5 Spanish players who have played in the Championship, past or present.
Pablo Hernandez, Inigo Idiarquez, Manel, Pablo Canyago, David Raya.
He just got in. He just got in, ladies and gents. I think that was the 9th second where he just said David Raya. Wow, that was intense. Never expected to hear Manel on today's recording.
No, I think he only made like 9 appearances for Derby in 2004.
Could have said anyone, really. Is Manel definitely Spanish?
Yeah, he's definitely Spanish.
Are you sure?
Spanish. Yeah, he's Manel.
How do you spell it?
Manel. You can't fact check me now.
Because I'm looking at it right now and I'm struggling to find him on the list of foreign EFL Championship players, Justin.
Because he's a nomad. That's why.
A debatable one.
Have a word.
Let's take a quick break. We'll have a quick fact check and then we'll come back to see if Justin has been successful or failed in the first ever 5 in 10 here on the second tier.
And then he said Fabian Wilderness.
Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. We've had VAR look into it, and unfortunately, ladies and gents, Justin Peters fallen foul to the first ever 5 in 10 here on the Second Tier midweek show, because Manel, who, as Justin said, made 15 appearances for Derby County in 2004, actually signed the season before the first ever championship season. Justin, do you feel aggrieved?
It depends on whether you consider the old First Division as it was back then as the championship. Football existed before the rebrand.
Not in my eyes. It's 2004 onwards. That's all I care about. So unfortunately, Justin, you've fallen foul. But did you like the feature? Is it something that you want to see more of?
I enjoyed it. It got my heart rate up, which doesn't usually happen on this podcast unless you say something completely disappointing.
The point. We need you to stay on your toes during the international break. That's all I'm looking for. But just a bit more nonsense before we get on to some more news from the past week. In last week's episode, we were discussing being blocked by celebrities on Twitter for no reason whatsoever. Justin, yours was?
Burnley, the football club.
Yes, not even a celebrity. The Burnley as an entity have blocked Justin Peach on Twitter, or X. For me, it was Jerry the King Lawler. Two very different examples there. But we put out the question to the listeners to get in touch, and we've got a couple of good ones here. We've got Dale, who said he's been blocked by Frankie Boyle, and he has no idea why. Frankie Boyle's someone I always forget about nowadays.
Yeah. He's not. He doesn't dip into the controversial as much now, I don't think, which is why he's not as relevant.
I say that I did see him like a few months ago. He's clearly not left much of an imprint on my memory, even though he was quite good from what I remember. And we've also got this one from friend of the show, Ben Rowley, from the Stoke podcast, the YYY Files. He got in touch to say he's been blocked by Xherdan Shaqiri and doesn't know why.
Hero. Never meet your heroes.
Never meet your heroes, and you never will, Ben, unfortunately, because Shaqiri blocks you out of life. But yeah, if there's any others out there who you would like to suggest, listener, get in touch, secondtierpod@gmail.com. Alternatively, just DM us on Twitter. And we'd love to hear them, as long as it's not for abusive reasons, of course. But of course, let's get back onto some newsy bits, Justin. And we were the ones causing the news this past weekend, because we had our second tier meets episode with Sunderland sporting director Christian Speakman, which went out on Sunday. I've got to say, I've been slightly overwhelmed by how much people enjoyed it. Been getting quite a lot of praise from Sunderland fans regarding that, but it's because Speakman's quite an elusive character. So we're really grateful to him for saying yes to chatting with us. And it's a great listen, if I do say so myself. Even if you're not a Sunderland fan, I highly recommend it. But it was the first time he's spoken in public about a few things, like the Mick Beale saga last season and interest in Chris Rigg, amongst other things. Justin, was there any particular moment in there which stood out to yourself?
I think not particularly moments. I mean, the process of identifying the Briss was actually very interesting. But I think the first thing that sort of popped into my head was how open and candid he was. Because I think a lot of the times with these sorts of interviews, there is a nervousness from me personally, because I think players and staff can be very closed off, very strict, very rigid, very media trained. Yeah, not really give you anything. Whereas Speakman was very open, very honest. I say very transparent with everything, and just met every question head on, which is just refreshing to hear from someone ingrained within football. But I think more so on the Briss appointment, that for me, like, the remit at Sunderland is to develop and have elements in place to develop, from young players to coaches in charge. And the first choice element of selecting a manager was just a brilliant response. Obviously, he said there is no first choice, there's no such thing. So whenever we talk, it just changes the narrative from us, I think, a little bit as well, because Cardiff are going through a new manager. Is there a first choice? No, they probably have 100 different names that they're looking at, and they've got to find one that fits the bill. So it was just very, very interesting, and that's where you come away from these sorts of things and you just sort of ponder a little bit. It gives you a lot of shower thoughts, I think.
Okay. I mean, deep
thinking in the shower. That's what it is.
Until you got to the shower thoughts bit. Yeah, I was very surprised about how open he was as well, because I mean, I did ask a few stinging questions, I suppose, like the Mick Beale saga, and I mean, I've done so many interviews over the years, and what's that meant to mean? I'm just
waiting for you to name drop some of the people you've interviewed. It just feels like an ego massage.
I mean, like, I don't know, Boris Johnson or anything like that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is, I've done so many interviews over the years where, you ask a question and then his publicist or whatever will ask it to be taken out. But that wasn't the case with Speakman, because he could have very easily said, I don't really want to talk about the Mick Beale thing. But he did, and I think fair play to him for doing that, and I think he gave really detailed and good response about it. So I was just very, very impressed with how he came across to us. And, you know, when it's a sporting director, you're right, they can be a bit shut off at times, but I think he spoke really well. I was very impressed.
If you were that good of an interviewer, you'd have asked about the Mick Beale burner account.
I didn't really want to. It's not really anything to do with him, I guess. I think.
What are your thoughts, Christian, on Mick Beale creating an account to praise himself in the midst of a terrible run of form?
It's been a bit awkward, but yeah. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend it. I think it's a really good listen, even if you're not a Sunderland fan, as I say. So yeah, that was Sunday's episode. You can watch it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. Let's move on, Justin. Unfortunately, we have had some more tragic news in the past few days. Bristol City have announced Liam Manning is going to be taking a leave of absence following the death of his recently born son. Assistant coach Chris Hogg will be in charge of the first team in the meantime. Terribly tragic news, and we of course send our best wishes to him and his family. Just in times like this, football obviously isn't very important. The most important thing is he takes the time that he needs to come to terms with this, and it doesn't really matter how Bristol City get on in his absence in comparison to something like this. But from a football perspective, it's obviously a big blow not having your manager available, isn't it?
It is, but I think even when talking about football, you have to recognise the human element. And obviously there won't be many people who understand what Liam Manning's going through. And yeah, I have no doubts that the players will give it everything to make sure the football club's in good hands. But as I say, everything pales in comparison to what Liam Manning and his family are currently going through.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and it's got to be said, they have got some tough games coming up. Middlesbrough, Leeds, Sheffield United, Norwich, Burnley, all before the end of November. And as we say, it doesn't really matter how Bristol City get on in that time in comparison to, you know, Liam Manning needing to take some time out of the game. And he should be allowed to take as much time as he wants, but it'll be interesting to see how they cope in the meantime, in his absence. But yeah, we of course send our best wishes to Liam Manning and his family. And Justin, we'll finish off with this because a Championship icon has retired. Former Sheffield Wednesday striker Atdhe Nuhiu has hung up his boots at the age of 35. Made 277 appearances for Sheffield Wednesday. An absolute hero for Championship fans in the mid-2010s, Justin. I used to love watching Atdhe Nuhiu causing chaos up front.
He was the chaos theory in a nutshell, wasn't he? It's just bring him on and see what happens. But just firstly, seeing his age in the running order at the age of 35, I could have sworn he was 35 when he scored that absolute screamer for Wednesday all those years ago. But yeah, you're right. He's the chaos option. Just a player who surprisingly didn't really have to jump, but it just never looked convincing when jumping for a header. You just knew something was going to happen. You were going to create an opportunity with him on the pitch. Doesn't matter how, because he's a battering ram. He's the human form of a sledgehammer. There's no grace. There's no shine to it. Yeah, it's just there to do a bit of damage, and let's see what happens at the end of it.
Okay. Again, we'll have to add that to the list of Justin Peach spontaneous metaphors.
No. I think that's perfect metaphor for Nuhiu because
I think it makes sense. It just, again, it's one of those where you start off and I'm like, I have no idea where Justin's going.
Neither do I. But a sledgehammer's there just to break shit and cause a bit of damage to, if you're moving some slabs off the patio, how do you get them off? You sledgehammer. You want to score a last minute equaliser, bring Nuhiu on.
Okay. I mean, you say that. Let's be honest, he wasn't the best footballer in the world. He had 7 seasons at Championship level, only had one where he scored double figures, which is pretty good going.
But how often? It doesn't matter how many goals he scored. How often did he worry defenders? How often did he stress people? The stress level of opposition go up when he came on the pitch. That's what you got to measure. You can't measure that. Can't measure that.
I am not disagreeing with you there. If you're looking for a big bully target man who works his socks off relentlessly, he was that, wasn't he? He was the definition of that, and he was effective. Not necessarily the most skillful footballer on earth. I don't think he'll ever win any awards for that, but he was effective. I mean, in the season Wednesday got to the Championship playoff final, he made 41 league appearances in that season. So, you know, it does have an effect when you're a 6'6" brick shithouse coming off the bench, which he often did. And he always stood out when you watched him live as well, wasn't it? And
because he was massive.
Because he was massive. And that made it all the funnier when he scored that absolute worldie, which you were talking about there, which no one ever expected from him, where it was against Preston, I think it was. He's at the corner flag, dribbles past 3 players, and then curls it into the top corner for the edge of the box. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, just one of them where you think, and no disrespect to him, how the fuck did you pull that off?
Massively. I don't think that is any disrespect, because I think surely he'll be able to admit he was never the most technically gifted footballer on earth, but every so often he did something like that, which came out of the blue. Interestingly, Barry Bannon paid tribute to Nuhiu on Instagram and said he was sure he would be a top manager or coach one day. Yeah. So don't be surprised to see him in the dugout at some point, I suppose. I mean, bloody hell, you don't want to argue with him in the other dugout, would you?
Nuhiu's tiki-taka. It's going to be so ironic when his teams pass it out from the back, and I can't wait.
You reckon it's going to be like, I suppose Vincent Kompany was a bit surprising when he turned up on the first day at Burnley and had them playing tiki-taka. You reckon Nuhiu's going to be like that, do you?
Nuhiu's going to be more advanced.
Oh, really?
Nuhiu to buy in 2028. You heard it here first.
You've heard it here first, ladies and gents. Atdhe Nuhiu, what a legend of the game.